Good evening. The sheriff says no foul play. The dead man's family says cover-up. Tonight, how they're trying to prove it. Part 2 of our exclusive investigation, where they're continuing 360 exclusive investigation into the death of 28-year-old Alfred Wright. He's the rural Texas father of 2 who vanished last November. His family found his body nearly 3 weeks later, 2 weeks after local authorities gave up searching. The local sheriff told them there was no sign of foul play. The family says that virtually nothing underlying that conclusion makes any sense. Not the cause of death, not the body's condition, not the official theory of how and why a man with everything to live for, stripped down to his boxers, wandered off and gave himself a lethal dose of drugs that his family says he has no history of using. As we reported last night, they say it adds up to a murder and a cover-up. Tonight, their evidence, but first a warning, some of the images in the report are graphic. Here's part 2 of Deborah Farrig's exclusive report.
On the bramble-covered trail not far from Alfred Wright's body, volunteer searchers immediately noticed something out of the ordinary.
And one thing that really stood out when we first found the body, we couldn't explain the dime. Why is there a silver dime laying on top of the ground? We couldn't figure that one out.
It's unlikely the dime fell out of Alfred's pocket, since he was found wearing only black boxers, his shoes, and a single sock with his cell phone tucked inside. There'd been lots of rain and heavy winds, yet the shiny dime was spotted in plain view on the edge of a trail. That trail is off the cattle field, which Sabine County Sheriff's deputies had supposedly searched looking for Alfred in the days immediately following his disappearance.
I mean, there's the open gate here, almost a straight path, and then his body was right through the gate, the fence here, on one of the only open trails in this woods.
The presence of the dime seemed strange. Strange, that is, to everyone but Brenda Chastain.
When I heard that a dime was found close to his body, that spooked me.
The East Texas woman was in a relationship with Sabine County Sheriff Tom Maddox, the sheriff in charge of the search for Alfred Wright. She says she and the sheriff dated, not exclusively, for about 3 years. She broke it off not long ago, in part, she says, because weird things were happening.
I have found a dime. Like in different places, like the bathroom sink, pull the covers back, the dime's there. The car where when your car door is shut, it's set in there somewhere. When you open it, it falls out.
We asked her to show us. So that morning, you know definitely you had made the bed.
Most definitely, yes.
Okay, and what did you find?
Well, after I'd gotten my shower and got ready for bed, what I normally do, I'll either throw the pillows in that chair, but what I do is like that number. And then when I pulled this back, there was a dime sitting, laying on the...
Right in the middle of the bed?
Right in the middle of the bed, on my side, yeah.
On your side?
Which is interesting, how they know which side I sleep on. How they know I don't sleep on that side. Who knows I sleep on this side? Who knows my habits? And an old logging trail.
Chastain says she has no idea who left the dimes. We found no evidence tying them to the sheriff. In the criminal world, dropping a dime means snitching on someone, and leaving a dime at a scene can be a warning to keep your mouth shut. Chastain lives in Rusk County, more than an hour from Sabine. She'd been complaining to her local police and sheriff deputies about suspicious behavior at what she calls a known meth house adjacent to her 63-acre property.
Complain to the sheriff, anybody that would listen.
People in Sabine County and surrounding towns say there are a lot of drugs, a lot of meth in these areas. Alfred Wright's official autopsy found 3 types of drugs in his system: meth, cocaine, and amphetamines. His left ear and his tongue were missing. The 28-year-old physical therapist and married father of 3 was on his way to treat his last patient of the day when his truck broke down at a liquor store. He was on his cell phone with his wife, waiting for his parents to pick him up when he disappeared, bolting into the deep East Texas woods, according to the store clerk, who was one of the last known people to see him alive. Despite finding his clothing on a nearby ranch, the sheriff had called off the search for the college grad after just 4 days, offering a theory but no evidence.
You know what he told us? Oh, he just ran away. He was probably on drugs. And if someone is on meth, this is how they act. They get hot, they get out of their clothes. I'm looking at my husband and I'm saying, okay, why is he coming up with this? No one has said anything about any drugs or anything.
We spoke to someone who knows a lot about the local drug culture, but who was too scared to speak to CNN on camera for fear of reprisals from Sabine County law enforcement. The person says everyone is talking about Alfred's death, and yet no one in the area remembers ever seeing Alfred buy or use drugs. His family also says they'd never seen him use drugs. A search of his truck may have provided immediate answers. However, the family says Sabine County Sheriff deputies did not search it, claiming it had been contaminated after his wife moved it away from the front of the store, as she'd been asked to do by one of the deputies. With so many unanswered questions, we went back for a second time to try to talk to the Sabine County Sheriff in person. There are so many unanswered questions. We just wanted to circle back around, sir.
Have a great day.
We just wanted to circle back around and give you the courtesy. Okay, thank you very much. As for the presence of the dime not far from Alfred Wright's body and his missing tongue, they may or may not be significant. But they add more questions to the dozens already out there. Did Alfred Wright know something he was not supposed to? Something possibly threatening? Something that ultimately led to his disappearance and death? And was his death a warning to others? Alfred Wright's body was found less than 150 yards from where sheriff deputies had originally set up their search command post.
How was he so close? And we didn't find him. It's not like he was miles away. He was right there.
Saying there was no foul play, Sheriff Tom Maddox called off the search after only 4 days, leaving family and friends to find the body on their own.
And it says that his spirit spoke out to me and said, "Daddy, I knew you were going to find me."
And just as the sheriff had foreseen, an autopsy did find drugs. 3 kinds, including meth, though his family insists they had never seen him do any drugs.
I still know and believe wholeheartedly that someone did this to my husband.
Despite heavy rains, thick mud, brambles, underbrush, barbed wire, and wild animals, Alfred's body was found surprisingly clean and virtually intact, 19 days after he disappeared.
If that body was there for 19 days, it would have been in a much different state than when it was found.
Alfred's body was stretched out, and he was wearing a pair of black boxers, 2 tennis shoes, but just 1 sock. His father and the volunteers who had searched for him, on the other hand, were caked in mud, and their clothing was torn, which made Alfred's appearance even stranger.
What was weird about his sock is that in this area, his socks were clean and his sock was pulled up as if with his thumb stuck in it, as if he was in a Sunday school class. Neat. Okay. His tennis shoes was very clean.
What about his car keys?
I was told by the mortician that came to the barrier, who was there at the autopsy, that when they pulled off his left shoe, which did not have a sock, his keys was under his left feet in his shoe.
The second sock was under the body. Dogs had searched that ranch area in the days after Alfred's truck broke down, and some of his clothing was found scattered around the property. Then there was no sign of Alfred, leading the family to believe his body ended up here after the search.
There's an open gate here, almost a straight path, and then his body was right through the gate, the fence here, down one of the only open trails in this woods.
What doesn't make sense to you about what you were told by law enforcement?
Everything.
We went to the Sabine County Jail to talk to the sheriff. He refused to meet with us, but as we waited outside, he did return my call. And I understand that it's been turned over to the Texas Rangers, but there are a lot of rumors, a lot of speculation, a lot of allegations, and we just wanted to give you... Before I could finish, Sheriff Maddox told us to call the Rangers and said he never comments on rumors and speculation. You stand behind your handling of the initial stages of the investigation, sir, and how it was done? The sheriff repeated that at his request, the investigation was turned over to the Texas Rangers. That was 1 month after Alfred's body was found. The sheriff had told the family there was no foul play. The Rangers, however, have since called Alfred's death questionable and have asked the FBI to assist. So what about the drugs and the autopsy performed by a local medical examiner and attended by a Texas Ranger who is also a close friend of the sheriff's? The autopsy determined that Alfred's death was accidental, caused by a drug overdose from a mix of cocaine, amphetamines, and meth. Yet astonishingly, that same autopsy concluded that Alfred Wright died 3 hours after his family found his partially decomposed body. The official autopsy found shallow puncture wounds on his left palm, left thigh, leg, and abdomen, but no evidence of severe trauma. And those missing teeth? The report concluded it was due to insect activity. And what appeared to be that straight cut on his neck was due to animal activity. Suspicious of the investigation, the family had already hired an independent pathologist who made a very different finding after examining the body herself.
I have a high index of suspicion that this is a homicide.
Dr. Leanne Grossman says that contrary to the autopsy, Alfred did appear to have severe trauma to the neck and head, his missing ear and teeth evidence. And it seemed his throat had been slashed.
Having seen Alfred's body, I know that that's not the case. I know that drugs don't cause that type of severe trauma.
The medical examiner would not talk to us. The Texas Rangers acknowledged the high level of mistrust in the community and said the autopsy is only one part of an active investigation. So why is it that so many things don't add up? The Wright family believes the sheriff and his deputies may know more than they're saying.
They was defining their story.
Before the investigation had even
concluded. And by the way, I don't think we really had an investigation.
Okay.
It seems that most that have taken place so far is to discredit my son.
The family suspects Alfred may have been held captive and tortured during the time he was missing. They want forensic evidence to determine whether the drugs entered his body before or after his disappearance. And they don't believe he left the liquor store on his own. That store is owned by a former sheriff's dispatcher whose son is a deputy. And even though there are visible surveillance cameras and a sign that says 24-hour surveillance, the family's lawyer was given multiple explanations for why no surveillance images exist.
Within one 5-minute conversation, I'm told 3 different stories. I'm told that it was a system that didn't work. Then I'm told that it was kind of malfunctioning. Then I'm told that it was a live feed camera, that you could only see what was happening at the time it was happening. The third was that it was a VHS system and that there was no videotape in place at the time.
More than 2 months after Alfred Wright disappeared, his truck had not yet been searched, and no one from the family had been formally interviewed. After his death, wife Lauren went through bank records and found 3 charges her husband made at local hotels when she and the children were away the month before he died. Texas Rangers are pulling video from one of the hotels to see who Alfred was with. The family says it wants answers no matter how painful those answers may be, and it has been holding vigils to keep Alfred's memory alive. For now, Lauren Wright and her 2 young sons are coping the best they can.
My 4-year-old asks a lot of questions. He doesn't understand why his dad doesn't come home. And my 2-year-old asks for him all the time.
What are you telling them?
Well, we told my 4-year-old that the Angels came to pick Daddy up from work one day and that he needed him. He needed him back.
So many questions unanswered. Deborah Farrick joins us now. All right, so as you reported, the Texas Rangers, they've taken over this investigation. The FBI is getting involved. Is there any sense of a timetable? Do we know where they are in the investigation?
Well, Anderson, what we do know is they still have not searched that truck. They still have not interviewed any members of the family, not officially. And remember, several of the family members, the wife and his parents, they were eyewitnesses to what was going on the evening that he disappeared, and then all through the search. So they've not reached out to them as of yet, Anderson.
I don't understand how, they had a search they had with dogs that went on for several days. If his body was there during the search, just a short distance from the command center, that seems hard to imagine, and the condition of the bodies, you said, didn't, according to witnesses you talked to, it didn't sound like that was a body that had been left out in the woods for more than 2 weeks.
Well, that's exactly right, and that's why the family wants to know exactly when those drugs actually entered his system, whether in fact it was during the 3 weeks that he had simply disappeared, that he vanished, because they don't believe that that's where he ended up, certainly not in the days immediately after he disappeared. Also, the Texas Rangers did reach out to us this evening, and they tell us that, in fact, that cut to the neck, they say was made by the medical examiners. Now, I spoke to the lawyer for the family. The pathologist says, no, that is not clear from the autopsy. What's more, she has not been able to view the original autopsy photos. Those have been denied to her pending this investigation.
What about Alfred and his past? I mean, first of all, those hotel reservations while the family was away, that certainly raises some questions about maybe there was other things the family didn't know about. You've also learned he was fighting embezzlement charges.
Well, that's exactly right. And apparently what had happened is about 3 years ago, he was working as a bank teller, putting himself through school. $1,000 was stolen from an ATM. The prosecutors tried to cut a deal, saying that they would pardon him. All he had to do was plead guilty. He wanted to fight it. He said he wasn't guilty, and so therefore he was not going to accept any deal whatsoever, certainly not one predicated on any kind of guilt.
Interesting. All right. Again, a lot of questions remain unanswered. Deb Farrick will continue to look into it. Thanks.